Hello everyone. In this session, we're going to start recording some basic tutorials on Substance Designer. As for the basic usage of some of the nodes, I recommend you check out the free videos I have on Bilibili. There, you'll find some of my tutorials on node techniques in Designer. Here though, we're focusing on complete beginners, just introducing the basics of the software, its basic operations, and core functions. This software is mainly used to create things like these drum textures or maps like normal maps. At least that's how I use it. So let's first look at the upper left corner. Here, there's something called database setup. This file is basically our overall project file. Under this project file, we can create a new node group, right? Over here are some initial configuration options for node groups. We can just select empty. Now, each node group needs to have a corresponding output node, so that it can, for example, save the textures you create inside. For instance, if we right-click on this point here, export, and here it will read the output node, so we can output it here, right? Save it. When you create a new node, it doesn't have an output node by default, so it'll give you an error here, saying that you need an output node. So, if we press Tab and type out, we can generate an output node. Then we need to specify what it's outputting. Here, we click on this. Add it, right? Then here you can choose which channel it outputs. So just like this, we finished setting up a basic output node. That means every node group must have at least one output node. Alright, and then for this part, the overall layout of the screen might look different for everyone, especially if you're working remotely. You just need to drag this window. You can move it anywhere you want. You can arrange it the same way as mine or differently. Personally, I'm just used to setting it up like this. Next, the way we operate the software is the middle mouse button is for panning, the scroll wheel is for zooming, holding down Alt and right-clicking is also for zooming. In the 3D view, pressing the middle mouse button pans the view, and holding down the left mouse button rotates it. Right-clicking is for zooming. Also, if we hold down the mouse scroll wheel, that's also for zooming. Scrolling the wheel zooms in and out. But with this, you can't pan. It's just zooming with the scroll wheel. Alright, next, what we mainly focus on here is there are some simple basic functions that I use. Actually, there aren't that many shortcut keys you need to remember. For example, A is for adding a node, and then you type in the corresponding English abbreviation for the node, usually the math or English abbreviation. That way, we can get these nodes. Now, there's something I want everyone to pay attention to, which is the parent size. You can see it here, okay? Right here. Parent size is basically the default setting here. So for this texture, how big is it? For example, if we set it to 1024, right? Then it's 1024 by 1024, and it'll show up here. But if you need to control a specific node individually, you can do that here. Because right now, by default, things like the base parameter or the export size, these settings, the pixel width, height, and also some tiling modes, including its random seed for things like water vapor, all of these are by default set to relative to parent. That means they're linked to our parent node, which is set to 1024 by 1024. For example, the output size is linked to the parent and is 1024 by 1024, right? So what if we change this to absolute value? You can see it becomes 256 by 256. Of course, we can drag it to make it bigger, right? This way, we can adjust the output size of a single image. The tiling can also be adjusted here. In my course, we change this setting quite often. The purpose of changing it is to tweak some of its properties so it doesn't always stay the same as this original state. Next, as you can see here, we have a lot of preset models for viewing our final output images. For example, let me give you a simple example. A rule, right? Yeah, just a few points like this. Also, remember to check out my free tutorial. That's all you need. As for this gradient, we just input it and then it goes through a Blender node and then to our normal node. The normal node basically converts our grayscale image into a normal map. Then for AO, we use a node that converts the corresponding grayscale image to calculate its ambient occlusion, AO. So by doing this, we can see here, yeah, right, that it has some normal mapping now, right? And then our grayscale image can also be directly converted into a height map, so it should have some displacement as well. But usually when we're working on this kind of thing, using this box or cube view doesn't look that great. That's why in this scene, there are a lot of these shape presets. The ones I use the most are these. One is close, right? We use this one when we're working with fabrics. Another one is plan high res, which is a high resolution one. The plane is good, but here we still can't see the actual displacement effect. We need to go into the material settings for that. After we click on Default and then Edit, we can see a lot of parameters on the right side. You don't need to worry about the other stuff. I basically never change them. The only thing we care about is in the height section, where there's something called tessellation factor. That's our subdivision value. If we increase the subdivision value, this plane will be subdivided. Basically, it's like subdividing it 10 times. And then when we turn this up, right, the displacement effect becomes really easy to see like this. Then the high level determines the midpoint of the grayscale. For this image, if your high level is set to 0, then 0 is the starting point and it rises from there. If it's set to 0.5, then the black areas are pushed down and the white areas are raised up. 0.5 acts as a midpoint, meaning it keeps the plane at a value of grayscale 0.5. We can just leave this as is without changing it. Alright, generally speaking, we only need to adjust these two settings. So as you can see, using this software is really that simple. There are a few more things I want to mention to everyone. In the library, there are a lot of preset nodes, but honestly, most of these presets aren't really used in my tutorials. I just wanted to mention it. If you want to explore and try out things you like on your own, you can look for them here and drag them in like this. For example, the ones we use often, like the sampler, right? Personally, I prefer using the tile sampler, and sometimes I'll use the tile generator. These two are a bit different. I choose the tile sampler because it allows you to see more input images and gives you more control over things. For example, when we connect it, right, it turns into these little squares one by one. So how do you actually use each of these nodes? I'll be updating this for free on Bilibili later, and there will also be some examples in my course materials. As for some specialized techniques for clothing and fabric customization, we'll cover those in the case studies. So basically, these are the main features you'll actually use in this software. For example, in the top left corner, we can tweak the base parameters, right? Then just hold down the Tab key to create some nodes, connect them together, and then output the result. That's all there is to it. Okay, so I think that's enough about the basics of Substance. For beginners, the most important thing is to download the software and make sure you get the latest version, the one updated in 2013. Next, we can follow some tutorials on Bilibili. Just follow along with me and connect things together. That way, you'll get familiar with how it works. So this software is actually really simple, as long as we don't get into things like functions or FX maps. As long as we avoid those, it's pretty easy to use. So that's a brief introduction to the basics of Designer for now.